Hello and welcome everyone to the last edition of our Pride Awareness programs, organized jointly by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation Europe and the Rainbow Platform. We're coming live to you from Europride here in Malta, and we're going to discuss the value and the goals of diversity in politics and how we can increase them. We are looking back to a whole season of Pride this summer. We have had previously 3 other editions taking place in the fringes of Prides in Hungary, Slovakia, and Austria. We've had quite a journey. We've been talking with national politicians on different levels and with ambassadors of the Rainbow Platform about the value of diversity in politics. Maybe to recap it a bit so you're all in the loop, in Vienna we met a bit of more skeptical outlook. We talked more about the absence of quotas, about the role of the individual within a party. In Hungary, we focused a bit more about the role of interest groups in promoting diversity in politics. And finally, in Bratislava, actually, we met a radically progressive liberal party that was very much in favor of quotas, which I know is a very contentious topic when talking with liberals, and I'm sure it is going to come up today as well. Today's discussion comes against the backdrop of a bit of troublesome times. Europe has been met with a myriad of crises over the last couple of years. There has been a strong influence of anti-democratic and populist voices and influences across Europe. And in the same wake, we are also seeing that a lot of people, especially young people, are feeling disenfranchised with politics, and they're moving away from traditional parties, which does not necessarily mean that they are not politically engaged, because they very much take to political movements like climate change, like women's rights, LGBT plus rights. So they are there, they're just not really keen to like the traditional modes of political participation. And that's a bit what we're going to be focusing on today, because what do political parties do now? What do they have to do in order to reinvent themselves a bit, to become more diverse, to become more representative, again, especially ahead of the upcoming European elections next year in 2024. I am joined today by a very lovely panel, 4 people from 4 very different parties, from 4 very different countries. Right next to me, we have Miloš Hodun. He's the international officer of Nowoczesna in Poland, and he's also the advisor to the party leader. Next to him, we have Anna Martens, and Anna is one of the vice presidents of Iniciativa Liberal in Portugal, and she also heads the iLab, which is like the think tank or like the ideas producing unit of the party. Next to Anna, we have David Bedur. He is a member of parliament in Hungary for our Liberal Party Momentum, and he's also the chair of the LGBTQ intergroup in the parliament. And finally, last but not least, we have Lennart Selemink from the Netherlands. He is from one of the 2 liberal parties in the Netherlands, the VVD. He's on the board there, as well as on the board of Liberal International. He's an international liberal organization. Thank you for all joining us today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion we're having. I'm going to open with a light question, which to bring us all a bit on the same speed when it comes to our understanding of the discussion. I would like to ask you, what does diversity in politics mean to you, and especially in your country context, because obviously every country in Europe is very different. I would like to start off with Anna and then David.
Okay, so I'd start by saying that first and foremost, diversity in politics means diversity in points of view. Every individual is unique as a result of the combination of both their chosen and unchosen characteristics. And so a diverse society is necessarily a symptom of a free society, and vice versa. The same, if a society is genuinely free, then it is naturally diverse. As far as Portugal goes, Portugal in general, I think enjoys a reputation for being a tolerant country, especially compared to other countries in Europe and around the world. With the LGBTIQ community in particular, I mean, it's a very safe place. People from this community feel very safe there. Same-sex marriage, adoption by same-sex couples has been legal for many years now. But this does not mean that the country still has a long way to go. I think especially immigrant communities, even from Lusophone countries, don't feel entirely accepted and included in our country. And so there is still a long way to go, but I think we're at a good starting point.
Perfect. David.
Thank you. First of all, I'm so glad to be here. It's such a pleasure to be here in Malta and participate in this wonderful panel discussion. Let me start out by saying Hungary is not doing very good in terms of diversity. And when we talk about diversity, it's not just about how many female politicians we have in parliament or how many, what representation we have when it comes to the LGBTQ community, but it's also about age. And all three of these topics, I would say we're not doing very well. The Hungarian parliament has approximately 17% of female members of parliament, which is absolutely terrible. We only have a handful, and when I say a handful, it's 2 or maybe 3 openly gay politicians sitting in the parliament. And the age group is also very disproportional if you compare it to the actual society. Us as Momentum, we're all obviously a very young party with very young politicians, so diversity is very important to us. And for me, diversity means basically is the most important point I would probably raise is that politics and interest groups should be able to have a proportional system in the parliament as well when you compare it to society. So all ages, all genders, and all ages should be represented equally in Parliament when it comes to decision-making and public administration.
Thank you very much. You see, I've left out Milos and Lennart in the first round. I want to address the same question to you. But what many may not know is that Lennart and Milos have participated in some of the discussions we've already had for Pride this summer. So in the context of your understanding of diversity in politics, in what the context in your country is, maybe you could also reflect on whether it has at all changed throughout this program or whether it has stayed the same. Milos, maybe you'll start.
So in my case, I think the program opened up my understanding of what diversity is, and I participated in the event in Bratislava. So with our colleagues from Slovakia, and you think who might be closer to the Polish liberals than Slovak liberals, but then I realized really that our understanding of what diversity is and how do we get there is actually very different, and very often just the notions and the starting points are different. So for me, it was really really eye-opening to learn how other liberal colleagues from all around the region, I would say, first of all, Central Eastern Europe, but from Europe in general, understand this notion and what they take for granted, and what they see as a goal. And I also realized that actually some of the legislations we had in Poland, or we have in Poland, are progressive from the point of view of my colleagues, which was really interesting because we don't find them progressive. We think, this is just what we have, this is the status quo, and we are not going anywhere from there. But then you realize that in other countries, they don't even have that, and they are fighting for that with different, let's say, more private or privatized tools. But yeah, but still, diversity for me is full representation. So I fully agree with what David said. This is to have as much representation in politics, both in parties internally, but of course also in the democratic representation as possible. And of course, in the Polish context, the spotlight is rightly so on women and LGBTQI plus community, because these two groups are being attacked by the government. But there is many more groups that are not represented in Polish politics, including people with disabilities. And it is important that progressive parties, liberal parties are opening up themselves and opening up the lists for candidates from many different groups so that we have as full and complete representation as possible.
Mm-hmm. All right, Lennart.
Thank you. And thank you very much as well also from my side for organizing this, not only this event with you as moderator, but also the other events that you just mentioned. I think it's very important that we have those events. I can recall the last time that we had the Europride, which is not in Malta, but in Belgrade. and that was full of police protection in order to make sure that we had actually the opportunity to protest. And that's also a link to what I feel that this program does. It shows that LGBTI rights and other diversity rights are not something that you can take for granted. In every country in the European Union, we see that our LGBTI rights and other sorts of diversity are under pressure. And it is very important that we as liberal parties keep working together and exchange best practice, which is what we've done here. I'm a member of the VVD in the Netherlands. We just made the list for the national elections, which will be on the 22nd of November. I'm very proud of our list in the top 10 because we have like 10 motivated liberals in the top 10, of course, but 7 of them are women, which is the first time that we had it as well. My party is not perfect either. A few years ago, we had a government with only 1 female minister, but I'm very happy we learned from that is something that we cannot do anymore. And also we have 2 persons with a migration background in the top 10 actually. Also something that we didn't do in the past that well as we did it right now. But that is not something that we had like 20 or 30 years ago, and it is very much because we had these exchanges. And maybe very short, and I will keep it short for you as moderator, but 2 things that I believe why diversity is important. The first one is, and I mentioned it a few times actually on the stages of Rainbow Platform and also last time in Budapest, people need role models. I come from a country where when I was a teenager, same-sex marriage was legalized as the first country in the world. But still, as a teenager, I did hide my sexuality for like 5 years before I was ready to come out. And the main reason is because teenagers, and I think that's the same in every country, no matter how far emancipation is, they don't want to be different from the others. You just want to be like a normal person. Therefore, it's so important that you have role models in soccer, in arts, in whatsoever, on television, but also in politics, that you see that you are being represented. So role models is reason one we need, I think, diversity. A second one is we need to find the black spots in policies. What are the things that we didn't see? Even we're all true liberals, we all want equality for everyone, but sometimes it takes someone from a certain background or a certain community to make understand what it does, that a certain law is not, I don't know, a change so it is also accessible for LGBTI persons, like for example transgenders, which is very much a discussion right now in many communities. So for role models and the blind spots in legislation, I think we need more diversity and keep that focus on it together as liberals.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this first round of questions. It's really interesting to see. I think we all agree that visibility and representation is very important. Also to like open the doors for more diverse members of our parties, or to just produce societal change. It's really interesting to hear that, for example, in your case, Miloš, your view might have also been changed on like the differences or similarities of things that we're facing as liberals across Europe. So we already know that as a liberal family, we're all very diverse. We don't necessarily agree on everything. But it is therefore even more important to seek exchange on these topics and to broaden our horizons. Diversity is a very broad term. We've already seen that this does not only encompass, we've traditionally, I remember from my first discussions we ever had, it was mostly about women, empowerment in politics. Then we talked about including the LGBTQ community in politics under the term of diversity. And we've very much broached other topics like diversity can also mean like, does your party represent society as it is in the country that you live in? Does it have workers? Does it have single mothers, all these kind of things. So like, it's very broad indeed. In a second step, I'd like to talk to you about the challenges that your party has encountered in becoming more diverse, but we're trying not to be too negative. So like, we're going to talk about the challenges, but I would also like you to bring up successful, hopefully, approaches that you have taken in order to promote diversity within your parties, meaning either within your existing member space or to be more approachable for newer members in diversifying your party base, but also in creating more diverse party candidate lists as we're talking about elections coming up now. Let's start with David.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, obviously being, so our party was founded in 2017, so we're barely 5 years old, or 6, sorry, my math is not very good. So barely being a very young party, we obviously faced these challenges. And we had a lot of discussions within our party about quotas, specifically quotas for female politicians on our lists. both our national parliament list and our European Parliament list. And we have separate institutions within our party. One of the main institutions is the Congress, and there we had a lot of debates on the quotas. But at the end of the day, it always comes to an end that the majority of the party doesn't want quotas. But even when people don't want quotas within our party, every single election this issue comes up. And how we tackle it and how we work with it is that when the Congress votes on it, a lot of the people who actually vote, they have this in their mind. So there's not a forced quota to say, but at the same time, they still know the fact that we want to have a diverse group in Parliament, we want to have diversity in the European Parliament, and even in local council. So this is something that I think all of our members have it in their head, basically, that we want to have diversity in all different levels of public administration. So that's one thing. And the other thing what our party does, which I think is very good, is we have different interest groups within our party. So we have a group which is there for LGBTQ rights. We have a group for female politicians as well, and we also actually have a group for older people in our party, because since our party is so young and most of our politicians is around 30 or between 30 and 40, we also have an interest group within our party that promotes older politicians who wants to start working in politics, basically. That's one thing, and the other thing is our party foundation is actively promoting female politicians and helping female politicians getting where they want to get in politics and promoting women in politics in general. So I think these are the ways that we're tackling these issues we're having and trying to promote diversity within the party and trying to promote diversity in order to get more diverse levels of public administration.
Maybe to follow up on this, you mentioned a couple of times now that your party is relatively young.
Yes.
Would you say also, in addition, it is not just a young party, it was born as a movement of a party which is young and dynamic, as you've already went into. But would you say this is a benefit to addressing the issues of diversity within your party? Maybe there was, as you said, an already unspoken understanding of taking this into account when strategizing in politics, or did you have to actively bring this in?
No, I think it's absolutely a benefit that our party is so young, because the mindset of the people in the party, and this maybe not related to age, maybe because we're a liberal party, but people take diversity as, so to say, as a given thing. So it's not a question that diversity is important. So we don't have to have debates within the party, is diversity important or not? Of course it's important. We're actively thinking about, so we don't have to have those debates within our party. We have to have the debates on how to actually promote diversity and how to help different parts of society to get representation in public administration.
Perfect, thank you. We have another relatively young party here with us, with our Portuguese friends. And maybe, Anna, you'd also like to reflect on the question of what kind of challenges you may have encountered in promoting diversity within the party, or with attracting more diverse crowds, and how you've been handling this.
Maybe I'll start with the strategies. So one thing I think is, first of all, for those who don't know, Iniciativa Liberal elected its first MP in 2019 and then its first parliamentary group in 2022. So we're a very recent party. And so we've grown very fast. All of a sudden we went in 1 year from 2,000 to 6,000 members. And of course, in a time when we were confronted with several consecutive elections. So that was very straining for the party. And then for us to adjust internally so we could organize or address our party members and have initiatives to draw in more diverse representation within the party. So one thing that is very distinctive about the party is our communication strategy. We're very disruptive. We try to contrast with typical traditional politics by not having a boring approach. We're very fun and colorful in our communication. Our merchandise as well, which actually very frequently has the rainbow colors on it. And this, I think, is very important to, to engage, well, disengage or disenfranchised communities who don't feel represented by traditional politics and feel like they see in our message something different that they might feel represented by. Then we're very strong on events as well. There are no official numbers on this, but I have a strong suspicion that we're probably a party that has more events organized, and those events are open to everyone, for everyone to participate in. And I would just, I would highlight two things. So first of all, very youth-focused, and our presence in universities is increasing. And even at the local level, there's an effort, for instance, to organize events in association with local representative groups. So, for instance, just a couple of weeks ago, we had like a Goan representative association that organized an event with us. And I think this is important to signal to those communities that we're attentive to their concerns and that we can represent, if they agree obviously with our approach and our overall view, they have a party who's interested in listening and representing their concerns. Now, this being said, also I should highlight marches with for instance, we've been very strongly supportive of the Ukrainian community in the country, and always marching with them every time there's an occasion to signal. But, for instance, we've also tried to participate in LGBTIQ parades, marches, events, and it's been hard to participate. So we've never officially been allowed to. We've participated informally in 2018, 2019, then came the pandemic. In 2022, there was an event in Portugal, in Porto, where some of our party members who participated were met with some aggression. This is because in Portugal, and this is one way in which perhaps we're not very diverse in terms of points of view, it's a very strongly left-leaning country, and the left has kind of appropriated some causes. And there's little space for liberals, even though we're doing our best to signal to those communities that we're also standing for the same concerns and causes. Another thing that we tried, and just to bring this to a close, because I'm speaking for a while now, we can perhaps speak of quotas later. For instance, to engage more women, that's been a huge challenge. We're very strongly represented with youth, but we've had a hard time bringing on new female members into the party. And for us, this is very important because we don't just want to have people at the top and then the base not reflect also more membership from from all genders. And one thing that we've tried in a couple of events that did not work very well was, for instance, daycare for families to bring their children. What happened was our male members, who are parents, brought their children, but you know, that didn't draw in more female members of the party to participate in those events. Yeah, this is just to mention a couple of challenges that we faced.
Maybe also because David mentioned earlier the topic of quotas. I heard from you yesterday that there is a quota for elections for lists. How has that affected the way that your party works and sets itself up for elections?
I didn't hear all of it, but I think you're asking about the mandatory quotas
Yes.
in Portugal. Yeah. So Portugal already had a 30% quota up to until 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And the expectation was that by having a 30% quota, then female representation in parliament would probably increase naturally. That did not happen. So they increased the quota to 40%. We were against this, Iniciativa Liberal. First and foremost, if the 30% quota did not work, then 40%, it's not by increasing the number that you'll necessarily reach that result. And we think it's, you know, once the society is aware of a gender imbalance, then the most important thing is that we reflect on the reasons why that imbalance exists to begin with. And that we find creative approaches to address those potential causes. I think it's a multifactorial issue. We don't have enough time to go into what I think might be some explanations for this. But for instance, our party, we insist on having balanced lists even beyond the 40% quota. We're running in Madeira right now. We have a 50-50% representative list. And yeah, and actually in one case, in a local election, one of our branches presented an only female list, and that was rejected by the court because it has to be 40% at least threshold. So yeah, I don't know if that entirely answers your question. But
no,
yeah,
there's really interesting
yeah.
as an aspect. Let's move over to a not so new. I think we were talking about this, like Nowoczesna is not quite a new party anymore, but it's also not a legacy party, basically like an established party like VVD. What kind of challenges and solutions have you found?
I still find it really funny that Jana refers to Nowoczesna, my party, as not the new party. So we were created in 2015, and we still see ourselves as a very young party. But maybe it's time to grow up. And thank you, Jana, for the reminder again that we are not a new startup party anymore, because this is probably true. Yeah, we've been lucky. I think we've been lucky with the party. I would call it the party culture. So this common understanding of values, and it's on both levels, and I think these both levels are important to go through any internal reforms or like introducing innovation in the party, which is really important for really old parties, these legacy parties. So these two levels, meaning both the grassroots and the leadership, they always understood how important this diversity is. And yeah, so we've been created in 2015. We've had already 3 party leaders, like presidents, who were, changing in democratic processes. And I think all of them, 3 of them, they understood that the diversity is the core of the party and of our values. This is something that they wanted, and this is something that the members demanded. So we never had a discussion about quotas. We never had a discussion about any special place for minorities, but there was always a place for these groups there. So we went through the first elections in 2015, and our representation was half-half, so 14 men, 14 women, and we didn't have any quotas. Right now, the numbers are lower, but it's still half-half. And when we were successful in the local elections, and we could appoint deputy mayor of Warsaw, and we appointed one of a few openly gay politicians. For us, was natural. For other parties was something special, something to comment about. But for us was just natural. And I'm actually really happy that the current party leader, he's saying I'm a feminist. He's a male, but he's saying I'm a feminist, and this you can see a representation of it, the reflection of it, that he really believes that this is important. And we have the reflection of it in the party, in the parliament, and in the local council. So this was the positive thing, I think. So this party culture. When you are asking about challenges, I think I should bring up again that Poland is a country where, as you know, we have a illiberal regime that is fighting against women's rights, that is fighting against LGBTQI rights, and this causes huge polarization. But this polarization also created, I would say, this counter wave within the democratic opposition. So, the more they are pushing against women's rights and LGBTQI rights, I think the more the democratic opposition is like embracing diversity. And again, we don't have quotas, but if you look at the opposition list for the elections in October, they are very diverse. There is a women representation, I think, on the biggest opposition list. It's around 50% of candidates. But what's even more important in the Polish context is that on the top of lists in 41 constituencies, you have really diverse representation of candidates. So people who have big chances to be elected. So women and other candidates from representing minorities and different groups that are not represented well normally in the politics. They are not somewhere on the bottom with no chances to be elected, but you can see that they are on the top. So this polarization pushed the opposition to a more diverse corner, which I find fantastic. And talking about our coalition, so the Liberal Party in Poland is part of this broader coalition, which is the biggest opposition bloc in Poland. I think I can always say that I'm very proud that we are pushing the entire coalition towards this more progressive agenda, that we are trying every day to explain our bigger coalition partners who are more to the right than us, that this is something that matters, and this is really something that matters to us, and for us it's important to have this diverse list, and they are listening, and we can see the reflection of it on the lists. So, but of course, being in a coalition like that brings challenges for us as a small party, because we cannot accomplish everything that we would like to accomplish on the lists. Not all our points on our agenda can be reflected on this list, so this creates frustration. Being a progressive party, being a liberal party in this bigger entity, sometimes we can show successes, but also it brings frustration because not all our agenda points can be accomplished there. So I think I'll stop here. And being a old party, this is something that is growing in me right now.
It's the rite of passage now.
Yes.
We have initiated it. Maybe like a quick follow-up on that. Like you said, basically for your party, it goes a bit without saying, and it has just worked out in terms of diversity. Do you see this at all levels? Or is there some levels, like sometimes, especially in rural areas, we see less participation of women or of queer people?
This is a very good question, and this example also with rural participation is very interesting because, again, you've already mentioned it, but diversity, right, is not only about women, LGBTQI. Diversity is also about groups that we maybe do not see, and there are many groups that are not represented in the party, obviously. Of course, there's a question about what kind of party you are, and where are your strongholds, where do you fish for votes, and being a small liberal party does not mean that you can do it or you actually do not want to do it everywhere equally. So we are present and successful in cities and big cities, so it's easier. I think we are right now maybe too comfortable to expand in the rural areas for different reasons. So I would say in the current structures we have, I think that the topic is understood more or less equally everywhere. But every now and then we have some issues with, let's say, more conservative branches, because this is democracy, again, party democracy. People elect their own representation locally. But I think we have programs and we have instruments managed by the headquarters to convince the people in every branch that this is what we stand for. This is diversity. This is important, and we offer trainings and we offer some kind of guidance or leadership by the party leadership to show the correct direction, the good direction.
Great. I mean, also, it's to be noted that liberal parties in many countries are not necessarily the strongest parties. So you're going to focus on wherever you're successful in the beginning, and they can branch out from there. Leonard, you've been so patient with me. We see a journey here from like the newer parties to the more established parties. In your case, the VVD in the Netherlands is a very well-established party, and a quite successful party as well. What are like challenges in terms of promoting diversity in your party, and what have you done as a party to address these and become more diverse?
I'm almost reluctant to say here, but the VVD was founded in 1948, just 3 years after the end of the Second World War. It took us until 2010 actually before we became the biggest party ever in history in the Netherlands with Prime Minister Mark Rutte. And it took us until 2023, last summer, before, for the first time in history, we now have a female leader of the party. We used to have female presidents and very visible female politicians. But now for the first time, we also do have a female leader of the party. So I think we as VVD made some serious progress there as well. And there's a good reason for us why we love to work with so many new political parties that are here on stage, because they keep telling us actually as VVD, you have to keep changing, otherwise you become obsolete as a political party. So I think it's also something that we can learn from a lot. Maybe also for the sake of the discussion, my party and me personally, I'm, like every liberal bone in my body is against quota. Because for the first reason, you look at people as the part of the group where they come from, rather than the individual. So I think for me as a liberal, quota is something kind of illiberal, because you look at someone's background rather than someone's personal competences. The second reason is because it makes parts of society, maybe also political parties, a little bit lazy because you already like reached the quota, so we don't have to do anything else anymore when it comes to emancipation. Well, emancipation is much more actually than having just the people inside the room with a diverse background. It's also accepting the fact that maybe you have to change your policies or whatsoever. And a third reason is I think it can also lead to the stereotypes. The only reason why you are here is because ... So therefore, if you want to diversify your political party or organization or whatsoever, your company, I think the most important thing is talent management, to make sure that you diversify your talent management. I think that's what we did as VVD. We know that from the people who report for political duty, 75% of them is male, white, between 25 and 40, most of them heterosexual. So there's a certain type that is like overrepresented in who reports for political duty, which is fine because they are very motivated. The thing is, if you want to put people in a competition for certain positions, you want to have like strong candidates there. And for some people of some backgrounds, it is helpful to have like proper talent management to make sure that you make other people interested in the political jobs that are available. People from different backgrounds. So I think the main thing is for talent management, search what kind of backgrounds are underrepresented within your political party. Try to find out where the talents are. Where are the females? Where are the LGBTI people? Where are the people with migration backgrounds, etc., etc. And make sure you attract them to go to all the stages that are necessary to become proper politicians. And maybe one day you can change your entire list with 7 female on the list, etc., etc. So I believe in that approach. On the other hand, my nuances are as well. I mean, if you are extremely underrepresented in certain areas and society is keeping it backwards, I also believe that quotas sometimes can be helpful in order to make the change in the beginning. But I think the most important thing, if you want to really have it in your DNA as political movement or organization, talent management of the right people with all backgrounds and put them in the same competition to make sure that if you are at a certain position, everyone believes that you are credible at that position no matter what your background is. And that's a much stronger argument than just a quota.
I agree. I mean, the topic of the quotas came up on every stage of the way of the discussions we were having. In a bit of the consensus that we found is that, first and foremost, they are not a way to cure it all, and they're not going to work in a vacuum anyway. Like, for example, putting them in the Portuguese elections and just putting women forward. If you don't have a wholesome strategy on how to improve the visibility and the acceptance of underrepresented groups in certain public spaces and offices, so that they don't run into the issue of being seen as like the token person on a list for being on a quota, then that's not going to be sustainable at all. So like I agree that like in certain times and spaces, they may be a good input to get people into this visibility sphere where they may not have been at all, but without a comprehensive approach, there's not much use to it. Something that you've touched on a bit.
Can I briefly add something? Yes, one thing that kind of frustrates me in today's debate about how to engage more people is that we're really not looking at ways to involve people who are not predisposed to get involved. So, and I think there's a common thread, even with the youth, of recently emancipated minorities who are not drawn, they don't see in traditional institutions an avenue to pursue causes and, defend their views and dedicate energy and time from their we all have our brief time here on Earth, and we want to make it as meaningful as possible. And I think that it's important. One thing that our party has done is, for instance, and we have really a position in our board dedicated to this, which is the pursuit of looking for talent within the party and organizing events and also skill building sessions. For public speaking, but also for organizing events and so on. And the point of this is, as part of a minority or a previously not represented minority, that can hold you back for several reasons, right? And so to feel that pull and to feel like people are actively encouraging you to participate and perhaps help you bridge anything that would make you feel more reluctant to participate, I think helps to make a difference. And I think it's very important also to remind people, and I think in particular women, that participating in politics is not just being exposed. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the background, and that's where everyone should start anyway. Then if you're comfortable in the limelight, you'll step into that place. There's so much work to do. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's why it's so important that we have like programs also within the parties, also at a like higher level. We see at the European level, there's for example the Alliance of Her, which is organized by FNF and the ALDE party, which aims to promote women in political parties to empower them in their political goals, and to create this sense of belonging within their parties and among their own community as well. I do want to follow up on this actually with Lennart, because VVD has been a bit of a poster child when it comes to reaching people and like recruiting in the way that you, for example, also use data and just the information that you have. Because you're a really big party, so you have to be a bit more structured sometimes in how you organize yourself around these things. Maybe you'd like to elaborate a bit.
I'm very happy that is the image of the VVD, of course, that we're so organized and do everything proper. Now, as you mentioned in previous comment that I made here, the main thing that I think that we changed over the past 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, is actually for all politicians, you're kind of obliged to go through all the trainings programs that we have. And thereby we became much more structured in to see like, well, how are people acting on a certain level in a certain training, and give them the proper feedback. Maybe it's not yet a national level, it's another level where you can do the proper experience before you go to another place. And thereby also see like what are the talents from underrepresented groups within the party, because you get it quite obvious there who is reporting for duty, who is not, and making sure that you put those people in the right positions in the classes. And the Alliance of Her is indeed one of the great examples where we had some talents that were developed from the VVD as well, like Liesje Schrijnemacher, of course, who was participant. Yeah, exactly. She was participant of Alliance of Her, then member of European Parliament, and now Minister of Foreign Aid and Trade. And also when it comes to emancipation, the first minister in the Netherlands that is going to by maternity leave, which is actually odd that this is the first time. But I mean, using talent management in a proper way is maybe even more important here in this case than just data. Data is very helpful, of course, for winning elections, making sure that you make the proper statements in a proper moment. And also to see, well, like, how are the voters developing and what are their concerns. I think talent management and having the database on what talent management, what the results are, is the key for our success here in diversity. Which is something I believe, not something that we had in 1948. It is something that we developed over the past 2 to 3 decades.
Perfect. I would like to, maybe because I'm also looking at the clock, and how much time we have left, talk a bit about what we mentioned in the beginning. Next year we have the European elections. It's also super election year across Europe in general. So there's a lot happening, and a lot of parties are already thinking about their lists. So that's something that's coming up this fall, this winter, depending on your own national elections, which I know there's a couple taking place as well. What are your parties doing right now in terms of like strategic thinking about diversity in your political lists as well, and in your campaigning to reach voters that may have been disenfranchised with the idea of voting for parties in general, voting for a liberal party as well? We'll start over here with Miloš.
Yeah, I would lie if I said that Polish parties are preparing themselves for European elections. Because we have the most important elections in 5 weeks, which are the general elections. And yeah, they're important for reasons that I've already mentioned. After 8 years of an illiberal, ultra-conservative regime that has been attacking for 8 years minorities, this is the first goal we see. And then later we will have regional and municipality elections, and then we'll have European elections. So I think every next election is the most important. And but yeah, exactly So for us right now, opposition parties, they are showing that the issue of diversity is important right now. And I think we have to be reliable, and we can not only think, okay, in the European elections we'll show this and that. No, we have to show it in every single election that this is our core topic. And definitely women's rights and LGBTQ rights are the core topic of the opposition parties, of the Civic Coalition, which is the biggest bloc, and of the left. This is the core topic, and yeah. So to important parties, important blocs are showing that that they care about women's rights and they care about LGBTQI rights, and the change of the government is the only way that we can actually, make these rights granted or give the rights back, give everything that was given away back. So I think this is the most important strategy also for the opposition parties, is the change of the actual agenda. So to present candidates, both male and female and non-binary, who will be representing this agenda that will lead us to the change. So yeah, I think we need to be reliable by showing the people on our lists now to the parliament, who will be able to lead the change. And then once the change is there or it's happening, we'll present again the best list possible and the best agenda possible for the EU, because Polish people see the European Union as a safeguard of our rights. So the EU elections will be important. I don't want to say that we don't think they are not important. Just right now, everybody's focused on that. But Polish people in general see the European Union, see the European Parliament as a key institutions that will protect our rights, that are protecting our rights. So these elections will be extremely important, but the focus on them will be, I think we'll start really thinking about that in winter 2024.
A little bit. So, I mean, we can also talk about the national elections. How is it looking right now for your list? Are you happy with the range of diversity that you were looking at for the elections?
I'm happy with the trend and with the progress. So I'm happy that what I've been seeing in the last 8 years is really the change on the list. Like the lists right now, they look very different than they looked 8 years ago. And this is really true for, definitely two blocks in the opposition. They are more diverse, there are more candidates who come from different backgrounds. There is definitely higher representation of women, and even more women will be elected to the parliament. I also hope there are more LGBTQI MPs will be elected to the parliament, because currently we have only one member of parliament who is talking about him being a gay man. I hope there will be more. We had this wave in last municipal and regional elections. We have actually a wave of candidates who were open, who were saying very straightforward about their identity, about their agenda, about their support for different communities, including LGBTQI people. And this really changed the campaign. And this really changed many of city councils around the country, because from the city councils that were super not diverse, now they are diverse. And now we have different agendas present there. And I'm very proud also that my party has what I would say equality officers of two biggest Polish cities. So in Warsaw and in Krakow, we suggested to have this new position in the town hall of equality officer, and these are our people. So yeah, the list and their composition matters, and I can see the positive trend, and I hope the trend will continue in the European elections.
That's amazing. Anna.
Actually, let me mention that something that I should have said earlier. In Portugal, you do. Okay, I'll be quick. Then I won't mention something I didn't say earlier. As I said, looking for talent in the party is an active effort that our board has. And so getting to know our members, many belong to the LGBTIQ community, and they're very active on several fronts and local branches. One very active and well-known member is on our board. I have the privilege of working closely with him every day. And yeah, I mean, very strong candidates for the lists we have from just that community in particular. And then we do have an active effort to know our members and detect potential early on and start working with them to develop their skills if they're willing to step into a more public role. I'd like to also add that Portugal has only 21 MEPs, and I think 730 in total, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that means that we might, I mean, we'll probably get one elected, maybe two, if we're very lucky, three, and that's probably all. So yeah, it's very important to make sure that those potentially 3 slots or 2 reflect some diversity.
Right, I see David is agreeing with you. What is the situation in Hungary?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me start out. We also have a local election on the same day as the European election, and it's a small little fun fact. It's actually not fun at all. But the reason why we have it on the same day, it's going to give you a bit of an insight on how Hungary works and how the Hungarian government works. They moved the local election from October to June for the same day of the European election because that suits them better, and it makes the opposition struggle much, much harder if we have an election on the same day, local election and European election. But getting to your point and answering your question, we actually, both of our MEPs are females. So we already started this diversity basically in 2019. Both of our MEPs are female and they're doing a wonderful work. We're just in the middle of setting up our next list for the 2024 elections, for the European Parliament elections. And obviously our current the current MEPs are staying, hopefully, as well. So they're first 2 on the list. And then in the first 5, we have another female politician. We also have a male who represents the older generation. Since our party is so young, we try to put someone who can represent that generation as well. So I think if we look at the first 5, which is realistically, we're also going to get hopefully 3 mandates. If we are super, super talented in the campaign, then maybe 4, but 3 is more realistic. It's looking good. So the first 5 matters really on our list, and that's pretty diverse. So we're very proud of that.
Very good. Lennart.
Thank you. Actually, we have the same situation as Milos. But first, we have to take care of the fact that the next government of the Netherlands is even more liberal than the one that we have right now. That means that we have to campaign until the 22nd of November with this great list that we have right now. On the other hand, the European elections are very important. And actually, I wanted to point out the thing that I said in the beginning about what are the blind spots and why do we need LGBTI representation. We live in a European Union where most countries have relatively fine LGBTI rights, but also still on a continent where, in a union, where, for example, in Hungary, LGBTI propaganda is illegal. That means that movies like Love Victor or Love Simon and Heartstopper are not allowed in a country within the European Union up to a certain time. That's ridiculous. Or that we have LGBTI-free zones. And also that we have hate crimes still across the European Union. We had 2,500 cases in the Netherlands last year. I looked up the grades, and it was a 17% rise last year in Germany, 28% rise in France, 48% rise in the United Kingdom, which will be EU soon again. But the thing is, of course, I think we should, they're still much more welcome. But I think we should set a new minimum here. The Copenhagen criteria said only actually something about that discrimination of homosexuality is illegal. All the others is been left to the member states. And in most member states, that is perfectly organized. And actually, we see a lot of improvement. For example, in Estonia, which is same-sex marriage right now, or Portugal, which introduced it relatively recently, or even Italy and Greece now have civil union. But I think for the next European Parliament, it is important that we set a new minimum for LGBTI rights within the European Union, which is at least that LGBTI propaganda is allowed wherever and whenever, and secondly, that family rights are guaranteed throughout the European Union. And that is important also because we have the discussion of enlargement, of course, with the Western Balkans, Ukraine, Moldova. We know that there are very strong liberal voices in those countries, but within the European Union, there should be a standard of security and basic rights for everyone that is LGBTI within the Union. So therefore, I think, indeed, the European elections are very important, and LGBTI representation matters there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been told that we are maxing it out in terms of time. I would like to thank you so much for joining us today in sharing all your insights, all your experience, in all the outlook for the future as well. It's much more positive than some may have expected, and I think that is actually a very good signal for the future, for the national elections, for the local elections and regional elections coming up, for the European elections that we have next year. I think it's very important that we keep fighting as liberals for diversity in politics, to be as representative as possible, and to make everybody, like give everybody the sense of belonging that they should feel in our parties. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.